Up next, we have Dr. Kevin Tuer, so Managing Director of the Canadian Digital Media Network. Dr. Kevin Tuer is Managing Director of the Canadian Digital Media Network, a federal center of excellence in commercialization and research that is dedicated to establishing Canada as a world leader in digital media by creating and enabling connections and collaboration between entrepreneurs, companies, research institutes, government, and intermediary organizations across the country. Over the past 15 years, Kevin has held several engineering and senior management positions in the high-tech industry, including Senior Research Engineer with Computing Devices Canada, which is now General Dynamics Canada, as well as co-founder and CTO of Handshake VR, a company that specialized in the creation and deployment of touch, interactive, and network-enabled applications. Kevin, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Uh-oh. It's the Mac dilemma again.
Yeah. I'll remember
I'll
by
just mess it up.
by the last,
The engineer in the room will mess it up. Guarantee it.
by LAN, I'll have done this right away. There you go.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Bianca. I guess one of the things that I'm realizing is that by being here, I have a feeling I'm going to learn a lot more than I'm going to give. So hopefully that's okay. You could tell from sort of my background that my background isn't so much around the open data side of things, but it's more around the commercialization side of things. And in building out the Canadian Digital Media Network, it was about building an ecosystem around maximizing commercialization outcomes. And so I think you'll see those sorts of things come to play in what I'm talking about, and specifically what I'm going to talk about is this thing called the Open Data Institute. Open Data Institute is in quotes because we haven't really named what it is going to be yet, and we shamelessly stole some stuff from Cody, and I apologize right here and right now in public. So for those of you who are not aware of this initiative, the Open Data Institute, we, again, from a commercialization angle, we put together a consortium last fall, and this consortium sort of recognized from what was available and what's going on out there is that there's a huge opportunity in open data. The huge opportunity, again, I'm going to use this word a lot, so forgive me, is around commercialization. So we, with that, we proposed to Treasury Board and Industry Canada that we create this Open Data Institute. And from that, I think some remarkable things actually happened is that in the following federal budget, we were named in the federal budget to create this institute. And that caused me to ponder. It's kind of like the car or the dog that caught the car. It's kind of like, what do you do with the car now? But we have a strategy. It's okay. It's not that bad. But the idea being that we want to focus on the commercialization aspects of it. And I think aligning it with the Canadian Digital Media Network, which is a national network. We have 28 hubs across the country that we tie into. These are existing ecosystems, if you will, of commercialization across the country. And our model is to tap into this expertise and to aggregate that expertise for the sake of improving commercialization outcomes when it comes to digital media in Canada. So we're looking at applying, for the most part, the same sort of concepts in the creation of this Open Data Institute. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. One thing that, and I think this is very relevant to what Jeff spoke about in terms of the Internet of Things. I've got a Fitbit. Everybody, who's got a Fitbit? Anybody know what a Fitbit is? Wow, I'm glad you asked. This is a Fitbit. And what this thing does is it personalizes it to me, and it tracks how many steps I've taken, how many floors I've climbed, how many miles I've traveled, whether I'm active or not. And it tracks it. It all wirelessly syncs back to a website. And what it does then is it rates me, and it says, congratulations. So I get an email the first day because I met my goal, and it's like, congratulations, you reached your first 10,000 steps. So that made me feel pretty good. But anyways, this is the Internet of Things right here. And I guess the reason I'm bringing it up is because I'm a little low on my step count today. So I'm going to be walking back and forth to get this up. So if I'm wandering, that's the reason why. But again, it's an interesting example of open data and how data can be used, because I'm a data source by collecting this information with my Fitbit. And with that creates me the opportunity to make that data available if I choose to do so. And why would I do that? Well, maybe it's about improving my health care. So if people, if I can connect that with my electronic health record and the staff that looks after my well-being, they can propose situations or things that I can do in order to improve on my health and things of that sort. So I think it's interesting. But what I want to talk about primarily today is sort of the founding principles of what this Open Data Institute is looking to be. And that's, of course, assuming that I get the... I wish I could say it was.
Okay.
Did I break it?
I like how it's like, I know how to fix it, right? No. Enter? Nope.
I was going to say, trust me, there is more than one slide.
This should work. Okay, so I'm using these arrows. Of course. That's why it works.
Use the arrows.
Use the
Okay.
arrows.
So we've had a couple definitions of what it was open data, and I'm not going to challenge any one of those. I guess what I'm proposing here is open data isn't just for us, anyways. It's not just about public data; it's about private data as well. And I think in many ways the real opportunity around open data isn't the individual sets themselves, but it's the opportunity to merge and fuse those sets together, because I think that's when you're going to find different trends and you're going to learn more about what the situation is. So in my definition going forward, and what we're doing from a commercialization of open data perspective, we're not only looking at the sort of the public sector data, we're also looking at private sector data as well. And again, it's about commercialization and wealth creation for us. That's really why we're doing all of this. And again, it's leveraging what we've learned over the last 5 years with the Canadian Digital Media Network in terms of ways to bring sort of what were somewhat disparate entities together for a common good. And the idea is about it's not about the city of Toronto necessarily. Sorry, not just about the city of Toronto. It's not just about the province of Ontario. It's not just about the province of BC. From our perspective, it's about Canada, because we are taking on the world. We are not, and this is where I think our opportunity really lies. But commercialization can mean many things to different people. So it can be, it's the obvious, it could be wealth creation for the private sector, but it could also be about social enterprise. It can be about the environment. It can be about a variety of things. And again, I think we've had some good definitions of what those outcomes could be. But again, very much focused on our end game is how is that being used and how is it creating value? And that's really what we want to focus on. And for us, it's about, I think we have an unprecedented opportunity. And I think in the past, as Canadians, we've looked at, from a sort of the natural resource perspective, it's the kill it, mill it, and drill it. And then we ship it off to some other country to only produce that into a product that we buy back at a higher price. And what I'm saying and what I'm looking at is, well, I think this is our opportunity to use open data. In this case, it's a raw material, it's a natural resource that we own and that we have. And what we have the opportunity to do now is own the entire value chain. And then, of course, obviously, if we do that, then that means more wealth generated for Canada as a whole and for the individual partners as well. So it starts with that. And again, our desired end state is some sort of finished product. And again, fairly loosely define what product is, but creates value for somebody or someone or some organization. And the goal in question is, well, how do we get there? And so if you look at what we're doing, is we see ourselves as being that piece in the middle that helps to coordinate. We're the factory. We're not the factory, but we enable the factory, if you will, by bringing together partners and by bringing some national aggregation to everything around open data so that we can convert this precious resource called data into something that's of value to someone. And it is an ecosystem approach, and of course with an ecosystem approach, all the stakeholders have to not only give value, but they must extract value for it to be sustainable. So I think that's the challenge in all of this, is how do we take this data and how do we process it, convert it into product, into value, so that it's a thriving, self-sustaining ecosystem? Because In the little bit of knowledge I have in terms of what goes on around the world, and certainly the UK Open Data Institute is very proactive, but I think they're even challenged with, well, what's the demand side look like? Where are we trying to get to, and how do we get there? And I see that as something that, as a role that we can play in doing all of this. Another key element of what I consider to be, I guess, a founding principle of the Open Data Institute is this idea, the notion of the power of many. And how many have heard of the Gold Corp and the Gold Corp Challenge? Okay, so there's a few in the room. So if I get the facts wrong, you can correct me, and because I know it from a high level. But the essence of it is that here's a company that sits upon terabytes and terabytes of data around samples. And so it's essentially, it's mapping out their minefield, and it basically epitomizes, it defines what it looks like from a digital perspective. And of course the challenge is, where do I drill? Where are the deposits? How do I do that? And again, this is raw data. So it's not an obvious or easy task. And so Goldcorp did something that the industry thought they were crazy for, and they decided to open up this intellectual property called data. And they opened it up to the public. I mean, how ludicrous is that? You're giving away your intellectual property. Are you insane? What are you doing? But there was an end to that, and I think it was Mr. McEwen at the time was the CEO. He said, look, we've got this data, we've got subject matter expertise in-house, they can do their analysis, but in the end, I don't know where to drill to get the best impact. And so he put it out there, and again, he put it to the power of the many. He put it to the community. He didn't put it to just the subject matter experts. He put it to the students, and he put it to the researchers, and he put it to people who were entirely different sectors of the economy. And guess what? There was a solution that came up. And the difference about what they did, and this was back in 2007 it was, so it's a little bit dated, but what they did is they used a visualization approach to figuring it out. So they mapped the data, and that's what this shows. And what it did is, because they transformed, they converted this data into a form that brought different factors to the forefront, they were able to use this data and identify where it was they should drill. And they drilled, and they hit upon a very large strike. And you say, well, that's great, but what happened to the individual or group that came up with the solution? Well, they got a very nice strike out of it too. I think they got $500,000 for their bother and their worry. And I think the interesting part about all that is it wasn't somebody who you would expect that came up with the solution. It's somebody saw this as a natural resource. They had their own way of thinking about how they're going to convert and interpret this data, and they came up with an outcome that nobody else could. And what I love about it is, even though it's a private sector example, it illustrates the complete value chain, including who's getting value out of it. And you can see that why not continue to do this, because there's value coming out of it for those that are providing the data, for those that are manipulating and processing the data. And again, it shows that there's this opportunity. And now they had to get over the big element of the privacy. That was a little bit of a stretch for them, and maybe that will, at some point bite them in the rear end. I'm not sure, but I don't think it has till now. But the point of the matter is they were entrepreneurial, they were innovative, and they came up with a great outcome. And I think this shows what the value of open data is. And again, looking at it from a perspective of, in this case, the power of many. So, second last slide, I promise. And I haven't done any walking, so my Fitbit numbers aren't going up at all, but I'll have to rectify that. Own the podium, so I shamelessly store this. I think there's it's trademarked. I'll give due notice that it's not my idea. But it is very much from our perspective, let's own the podium. Because we do own all of the parts of the value chain here in Canada. Everything from the raw materials to the capability to convert that raw material into a product. There's no reason why we not only can't, be the best, the best in Canada, but why can't we be the best in the world? And I think if we bring all this together with a laser focus on the commercialization, the value outcome, not only will that benefit Canada and the constituents of, but I think it'll also be an exportable model and exportable product for Canada. And so we have every chance and every opportunity, I believe, to be a world leader in all of this. And it's ours to lose, and we need to sort of own the podium, if you will. So just to sum up in terms of sort of the Open Data Institute, where we want to get with all this. So it is a focus on commercialization. It is about converting the raw data into wealth of some sort. That's really what we want to focus on. But we understand there's lots of things that have to happen in between in order to make all of this happen. And it's, again, all the things that the speakers before me, and I'm sure the speakers after me, will address. It's about standards. It's about privacy. It's about the tool sets, it's about the repository, it's about machine-readable data, everything in between. So it has to be a complete ecosystem approach to doing all of this. And utilizing the network to accelerate outcomes. So again, I think that's what we can bring to bear as a Canadian Digital Media Network, is to tap into an existing commercialization network and do those sorts of things. And there's a couple of, there are laws associated with the value of a network, and the names are escaping me. But one law indicates that the value of a network is proportional to the number of nodes on that network. I don't think that's the right model. I think there's a corollary to that model that says the value of an overall network is proportional in some power to the value that each new participant brings to the network. Because you can have lots of phones and lots of connected devices on a network. That in itself isn't power. It's the data that's exchanged between those and the value it creates that creates the value. And then finally, this is a national initiative. This is, if I had a Canadian flag, I'd wave it now. This is an opportunity for Canada. It's an opportunity for all the constituents of Canada, and we want to do our part in order to bring that to fruition for the good of Canada. Thank you.